The car was old, but it looked brand new. Candy apple red paint job stands out a mile.
What exactly did you see them take?
LA is the city of angels. Just don't forget about the demons. The brighter the lights, the darker the shadows. The Noire. How ironic that the city of dreams creates the worst nightmares. It's the land of opportunity and opportunists, where hubris is disguised as humility, and there's a false modesty being sold around every bedazzled street corner. LA Noire presents the so-called Golden Age as one giant set piece to be examined up close and personal by the player and our partner in solving crimes, Detective Cole Phelps, performed in pristine motion capture and voice by the very talented Mad Men alumnus Aaron Staton. It's a detective game of the highest order, with a script worthy of the Screenwriters Guild Award, and acting mannerisms as convincing as anything you've ever seen on film. A game like LA Noire shows how far technical prowess can really take you. The patented motion scan devices trace every furrowed brow and every wrinkle across the actors' faces like a polygraph machine records fluctuations in heart rate in order to paint a narrative about truth and lies. Every visible gulp and every sideways glance is a tell. Every smug grin delights as much as it deceives. LA Noire has perhaps the greatest and most expressive character models ever seen in a game, in pursuit of not only photorealism, but dramatic irony. This technology, which is now some decades old, still beats out every modern game of a similar art style in terms of authentic performance capture. The character models don't just look like their actors, they very much live and breathe in the same light. Video game graphics should not simply strive for lifelike expressions, but for something in between dream and reality. I like video games the most when they look distinct to real life, through the use of imagination and artistic license to change the form and atmosphere of a world, while also remaining recognizable and relatable in context of the human subject matter. It's here that LA Noire, as a game nearing 1.5 decades old, still impresses more than the modern CGI games can with their higher resolutions, because those games, while technically superior, seem to lack the soul. Because LA Noire asked so much of its performers and received in return the same level of dedication that was taken with the writing, LA Noire remains more persuasive as a narrative game, with depth of character and as a visual feast. There are no forgettable faces in LA Noire. From the main characters to the NPCs, each and every face tells a story. Art should not strive for perfect realism. It's the in-between area of real and non-real that makes it distinctive. Video games before and since LA Noire have handled game elements better, like combat and driving and even basic mission progression. But the way that these elements combine to tell an immersive crime story in game form distinguishes LA Noire among interactive narratives. As great as the plot is, on par with many of the films it references, the study of characters is something straight out of a behavioral analysis classroom. If nothing else, watching the expressions change on a dime and the line of questioning is always intriguing as both passive entertainment and as an element influencing our decision-making. A game like Disco Elysium later on would nail detective role-playing and improve upon branching narrative pathways and RNG to elevate the adventure aspects. But did it ever feel this visceral when you stand over a naked cadaver, bloodied and bruised, getting details of a life story from the necrosis, and being able to get a sense of the psychosis of the killer by proxy of his work? Like most Rockstar projects, LA Noire is uncompromising in its grit, direct in its language, and immersive in its systems. When the developers want to show you something disturbing, they have no hesitation in showing it. When they need to say something unsavory, they say it. When they want to let the player do something, they let you do it to the best of their ability, within the restrictive nature of policeman roleplay. Although the gameplay is laborious, like real police work would be, the pacing is smart as it switches from meticulous crime scene investigations to swift police shootouts and light-footed chase sequences. It's the type of gameplay loop that a person has to ease into, not because it's technically difficult, but because the methodical nature of inspection is slow compared to the instant gratification we are conditioned to expect from most entertainment. There's a good break in the monotony whenever you make the change up from sweeping for fingerprints to lighting up criminals Okinawa style. Not too soon, I hope. The limited HUD display facilitates the feeling of going in blind, but never deaf, thanks to the targeted sound cues as hint indicators that you're getting warmer or colder on the trail of the killer. It's a process that gets as repetitive as it is unique, perhaps canceling itself out over the course of the 20-hour runtime, which is not particularly long for a game narrative by today's standards. But it can feel like a burden when you know that your job description doesn't change much, despite the promotions and demotions as the thematic tides of the story change. LA Noire boasts a massive open world for its time, attempting to squeeze every square inch of Hollywoodland fame into the grid. I do wish we could see the player waypoint more visibly, though. The map of Tinseltown is both expansive and intricately decorated with location set pieces and walk-in points of interest around every corner. It's an early example, at least in this subgenre of game, of the concept of if you see it, you can go there, with even more secrets tucked away to be searched for, like the CSI clues. Yet for its obvious size, it feels small as every area bleeds into one another like the murder case files. The areas don't seem to be as distinct on drive-bys as they would in a GTA map where they tend to stitch many different cities onto the same framework, as well as giving you verticality through the various air vehicles that give you a bird's eye view. If LA Noire isn't the most diverse setting in such a game, I at least admire how truly open the world is. So many of its landmarks and hotspots can be explored rather than simply viewed from the outside, a key idea that GTA needs to expand on for the density of its future games. After all of this, I still don't personally feel invited to explore all of it up close, because I know that my possibilities within the world will be limited. The drawback is that LA Noire is not a true sandbox, and you cannot roleplay outside of being an enforcer of the law. It's a shame then that a game that does open world design with greater attention to detail than the traditional crime genre titles do also fumbles the concept of free roam kill sprees that make my favorite games in the genre, like Mafia 2 and GTA 5, so addicting. Just as game graphics should show us something we don't see every day, so should games let us get away with being permissive. As intriguing as it should be to explore, without being truly free to play as you please in this world. It's largely filler, simply a space to fill the void during transitions from one mission checkpoint to the next, which can be remarkably skipped altogether by instant point-to-point fast travel, another great technical achievement of the time. The little bit of combat offered to our ex-Marines is through the brief random encounters which usually ends in a crazy car chase or a small shootout, and like the main missions, gives you a rating for accurate completion, and they can be replayed at any time if you want to see them again. But that's the limit of true free play in LA Noire, an understandable yet regrettable waste of opportunity. Along with the accentuated facial scans, the storyline of LA Noire brings a legitimacy to game narratives that is often passed along through unfounded praise to movie games, like the stuff that Sony is made of, the kinds of games that don't really use the strength of the medium to enhance the art of play acting. Of course, LA Noire is not the most interactive game out there, but it does a great job of linking its gameplay devices to its narrative devices. It's a detective sim, a mystery-themed game, warranting the puzzle-solving, exploration, and deductive reasoning. It's not an excuse for the lackluster mechanics that can be found and put to better use elsewhere in adjacent stylized games. But its ideas for gameplay are the incentives for its themes therein to be used in practice, as a game made by and for people who enjoy this style of film or novel, and simply want to play a detective more than watching passively along as Sherlock solves the case that was scripted for him. And as L.A. Noire is largely scripted itself, with some variations of dialogue depending on your correct or incorrect choices, it is ultimately a very linear experience, like a film, but a fascinating journey nonetheless. One that does require active participation and reasoning to connect the dots as they were intended. L.A. Noire takes directly from famous noir and Hollywood crime films, most notably L.A. Confidential, as well as a mixture of the films referenced by the collectible Easter eggs, many of which I'm familiar with. They even have the gruff-sounding Irish-American police captain that pushes for convictions to fill quotas over concrete evidence. Cole Phelps is a clever and charismatic copper with a hero complex to make up for his wartime casualties that promoted him prematurely. Bud White and Exley share the dynamic with Phelps and Kelso, two lawmen with contrasting attitudes and methods of police work that are willing to work together to fight for what they both disdain the most: corruption.
That's the guy. I heard he's an honest cop. Now that's an oxymoron for you.
In this world, being an honest cop is considered an oxymoron, such as the so-called war hero. Crime fighters like Cole and Kelso were made as soldiers, and the killers are cut from the same cloth. The counterbalance of good and bad morals through the use of good and bad cop is what keeps the story and the characters interesting throughout, even as the casework goes cold from a playable perspective. The little conversations and car rides where Cole and his partners debate ethics pertaining to police work, such as framing perps for lesser crimes in order to prevent worse crimes and to fill the coffers of the DA, or the nature of the women in their lives, are interesting and appeals to make Cole more likable than he should be given his past failures. Cole can be vicious in interrogations, yet kind and gentle with victims like Jessica, who have gone through the most traumatic of circumstances, as up to the player choice as well in order to create the contrast. That's what makes a character. Perhaps there is no better implementation of contrast than seeing Cole paired up with the many personality mismatches like Rusty and Earl as his case partners. It's worth playing L.A. Noire for the banter they provide alone, where they interject and chew the scenes in ways that would never make into a final cut of a film because of time constraints and audience tastes. In reality, they are a perfect fit here because they belong to this time and place in the seedy world, the world that exists in real life, but one which doesn't want you to be able to say things like they are. It's additionally clever how the optional find of the newspapers fill in gaps parallel to the story, like the flashback sequences that seem unconnected at first, but ultimately say everything that we need to know about character motivations by the end. Player choices and curated cutscenes and all, it's a more creative attempt at a true interactive narrative than what the usual suspects can claim to be, and a far more adult story too. L.A. Noire, like its contemporary GTA series, uses satire mixed with drama to expose the powerful. In this case, the dark side of Hollyweird, which we have all woken up to today, with the availability of information and the alternatives in the internet age. It shines light through the dark to expose myths, lies about history, misconceptions about game design, and it shows us some lessons to be learned for the future of games, as well as clues as to why the past continues to be so alluring. As they say in the game, a game will come to you and find you. You can't make it into something it ain't. Paraphrasing, of course. I believe that the good games have a way of finding us, as long as we look for them. The number one rule of life is that looks can be deceiving, but there's no denying that with these looks, L.A. Noire is one of the stars.
Yourself.
You disappoint me, Cole Phelps. Get back in there and raise some lumps, boy! I need a confession!
Or the hard way.
Name's Eli Rooney.
You've been in trouble with the law before, Eli?
Some.
What are you doing around here?
I like to keep an eye on the children.
Strictly paternal, is it, Eli?
Don't sass me, boy.
The truth is, my husband likes them young.
And you think that's okay?
I was 16 when I first met him.
I'm sorry, madam. Police officer, I need your car.
Did you just see?
You gotta get out!
I need the gun in the glove compartment to shoot you!
The lieutenant who won the Silver Star up on Sugarloaf. I've heard of you.
Something like that.
All right, have we finished flirting? You got something to discuss, Roy, or are you gonna stand around beating the meat while my lunch gets cold?
We have some questions.
Do I need my lawyer?
I yelled out to him, "I'll call the cops." So they loaded up their car and drove off, tooting and hollering and yelling obscenities at me in Mexican.
You speak Spanish, sir?
No, I do not.
Another good question. But where does it get us? It's like asking questions in the middle of the movie. If you just sit tight and keep your yap shut, you'll find out what happens.